The rattlesnake's warning came just as Tabitha Lockhart stepped off the dusty stagecoach. Her arrival in Copper Creek punctuated by the harsh sound that sent others scattering while she remained frozen in place. The year was 1876, and the Montana Territory was as unforgiving as it was beautiful, much like the reception awaiting the young woman who had traveled alone from Boston with nothing but determination in her heart and a leather-bound journal of medical knowledge in her valise. "Don't move, miss," a deep voice commanded from behind her. Tabitha felt strong arms circle her waist, lifting her clear of the ground and away from the coiled reptile. The scent of leather, pine, and horses enveloped her as her rescuer set her down several paces from danger. When she turned to thank him, Tabitha found herself looking into the most startling blue eyes she had ever seen, set in a sun-weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The man tipped his hat slightly, revealing dark blonde hair that curled at the nape of his neck. "Thank you, sir," she said, smoothing her travel-worn skirt. "I'm afraid I was distracted by my arrival." "Finn Calloway," he offered with a nod. "And it's no trouble. Rattlers don't give second chances." Tabitha smiled, extending her hand in a gesture that was perhaps too formal for the frontier. "Tabitha Lockhart. I've come to serve as the town's new doctor." The silence that followed her introduction was more chilling than the snake's warning had been. Several townspeople who had gathered to watch the commotion now exchanged glances that ranged from disbelief to outright derision. "A lady doctor?" someone scoffed from the small crowd. "My brother wrote that Copper Creek was in need of medical care," Tabitha continued, undaunted. "I graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania this spring." An older man pushed forward, his vest straining across a substantial belly. "Walter Jenkins, town mayor," he announced without extending his hand. "There's been a misunderstanding. When your brother mentioned a doctor relation, we naturally assumed." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "You assumed a man," Tabitha finished for him. "Nevertheless, I am qualified and prepared to serve this community." The mayor cleared his throat. "Miss Lockhart, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, Copper Creek requires a proper physician. Perhaps the schoolhouse could use an assistant. I am not here to teach children their letters, Mr. Jenkins. I am here to practice medicine." Tabitha's voice carried across the street, drawing more onlookers. She withdrew a folded document from her reticule. "My credentials, should you wish to review them." The mayor barely glanced at the paper before handing it back. "Very impressive, I'm sure, but our townspeople have certain expectations. They simply won't confide in a woman about medical matters." Tabitha opened her mouth to respond, but the mayor had already turned away. One by one, the gathered townsfolk followed his lead, turning their backs on her as though by unspoken agreement. Even the stagecoach driver, who had finished unloading her trunks, avoided her gaze as he climbed back onto his seat. The rejection was as clear as it was public. Tabitha stood alone in the dusty street, the weight of her dreams suddenly as heavy as her trunks. She blinked rapidly, determined not to let them see her tears. "They turned their backs when she spoke," Finn observed quietly, still standing beside her. His eyes narrowed as he surveyed the dispersing crowd. "Then I'll listen twice as hard." Tabitha looked at him, surprise momentarily displacing her hurt. "I beg your pardon? I said I'll listen," Finn repeated, picking up one of her trunks with ease. "Where are you staying, Doc? I'll help you get settled." I don't know," she admitted. "My brother arranged everything through letters, but it seems the arrangements were based on false assumptions." Finn nodded thoughtfully. "There's a boarding house at the end of the street. Mrs. Wilson's fair-minded, if a bit particular about her rules. She might have a room." "Thank you, Mr. Calloway," Tabitha said, gathering her resolve. "I would appreciate the assistance." As they walked down the main street, Tabitha felt the weight of stairs from windows and doorways. Finn seemed unconcerned, matching his stride to hers. "What brings a man like you to my defense?" she asked finally. Finn adjusted his grip on her trunk. "My mother died of childbed fever when I was 10. Doc who attended her was 3 towns over and arrived too late. Always figured if we'd had our own doctor, she might have lived." He glanced at her. "Don't much care if that doctor wears trousers or skirts, so long as they know their business." Mrs. Wilson's boarding house turned out to be a 2-story clapboard building with a tidy front garden. The proprietress, a widow in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, assessed Tabitha from the doorway. "A female doctor," she repeated after Tabitha had explained her situation. "Well, I never. But I suppose times are changing, aren't they? I have a room on the 2nd floor. $5 a week, meals included, no gentlemen callers past 8, and absolutely no medical consultations in the house. I won't have my other boarders disturbed by moaning patients." "That's very fair," Tabitha agreed, relief washing over her. At least she wouldn't be sleeping on the street tonight. "You can put the trunk in the blue room, Mr. Calloway," Mrs. Wilson directed, then turned back to Tabitha. "Dinner's at 6 sharp. Don't be late or you'll go hungry till breakfast." After Mrs. Wilson had shown her to the room and left, Finn set down the trunk and lingered awkwardly in the doorway. "I own the livery at the edge of town," he said. "There's an old storefront next to it that's been empty since the last dry goods merchant moved on. It's nothing fancy, but it might serve for an office, if you're intent on staying." Tabitha's heart lightened. "Are you offering me a place to establish my practice?" Finn shifted his weight. "Rent's cheap. Building needs work. But it's dry and has a good stove for winter." "Mr. Calloway, that's extraordinarily kind." "It's not kindness," he interrupted. "It's business. Town needs a doctor. You need a place to practice. Simple as that." Tabitha studied him, sensing there was more he wasn't saying. "Well, I accept your business proposition then. When may I see it?" "Tomorrow morning, if you like. I'll come by after breakfast." After he left, Tabitha sat on the edge of the narrow bed and finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. The journey had been long, the reception cold, and the future uncertain. But she had not come this far to turn back at the first obstacle. Copper Creek needed a doctor, whether they were ready to admit it or not. And she intended to prove herself worthy of their trust, one patient at a time. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of crisp autumn day that hinted at the harsh winter to come. Tabitha dressed with care in one of her more practical ensembles, a navy skirt and matching jacket over a crisp white shirtwaist. She pinned her chestnut hair in a simple knot and descended to the dining room, where she found herself the object of curious stares from the other boarders. Mrs. Wilson made brief introductions. Mr. Peterson, the telegraph operator, Miss Hayes, who taught at the schoolhouse, and Mr. Granger, an elderly gentleman who kept to himself. Their responses were polite but reserved, clearly uncertain what to make of a female physician in their midst. After breakfast, Finn arrived as promised. He'd exchanged yesterday's trail-worn clothing for a clean shirt and vest, though his hat looked permanently shaped to his head. "Morning, Doc," he greeted her. "Ready to see your new quarters?" The building beside Finn's livery stable was indeed in need of attention. The faded sign of Hadley's Dry Goods still hung askew over the door. Inside, dust covered every surface, and a family of mice had clearly been in residence. But the structure was sound, with large windows that would provide good light, a back room that could serve as a surgery, and living quarters upstairs if she ever chose to leave Mrs. Wilson's. "It has potential," Tabitha said, mentally calculating what supplies she would need. "How soon could I move in?" "Needs a proper cleaning first," Finn replied, running a finger through the dust on a counter. And some repairs to that back window. I could have it ready in a week if that suits. Sooner would be better. I can help with the cleaning. Finn looked as though he might object to a lady engaging in such work, but something in her expression stopped him. All right, we'll start today if you're set on it. They spent the morning clearing out old shelves and sweeping years of dust. By midday, Tabitha had removed her jacket and rolled up her sleeves, much to Finn's poorly concealed amusement. "What's so funny, Mr. Calloway?" she asked as she attacked a particularly stubborn cobweb. "Just thinking my mother would have had a fit seeing a lady working like a common laborer." "Then your mother and mine would have gotten along splendidly," Tabitha replied. "She nearly disowned me when I announced my intention to study medicine. It was most unbecoming for a Boston socialite's daughter." Finn paused in his work. "Is that what you left behind? Society life in Boston?" "Among other things," she said, suddenly finding the cobweb fascinating. "Must have been important to you, doctoring," Finn observed quietly. Tabitha met his gaze. "My younger sister died of diphtheria when I was 16. The doctor who attended her was competent but distant, clinical. He treated her condition but ignored her fear. I decided then that medicine needed more compassion, not less. That perhaps a woman's perspective might be valuable." Finn nodded slowly. "I reckon you're right about that." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside, shouts and the sound of running feet. Finn moved to the door, Tabitha close behind. A young boy was racing down the street, panic evident in his face. "Help!" he cried. "Somebody help! Pa's hurt bad at the mine." Without hesitation, Tabitha stepped forward. "I'm a doctor. Where is your father?" The boy skidded to a stop, staring at her in confusion. "You ain't no doctor. Where's the real doctor?" "There is no other doctor in town," Tabitha said firmly. "Now we're wasting time. Tell me where your father is and what happened to him." The boy looked desperately around, clearly hoping some male physician would materialize. Finn placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is Dr. Lockhart, Tommy. She's trained proper back east. If your pa's hurt, she's his best chance." Tommy's face crumpled. The tunnel collapsed. "Pa's leg is crushed. Mr. Donovan sent me to fetch help while they try to dig him out." "I need my medical bag," Tabitha said, already moving toward Mrs. Wilson's. "It's in my room, and I'll need clean cloths, alcohol if you have it." "I'll get my wagon," Finn called after her. "Meet you back here in 5 minutes." The Silver Creek mine was 3 miles outside town, a modest operation that employed about 20 men. By the time they arrived, a crowd had gathered around the mine entrance. The foreman, a burly man named Donovan, came forward as Finn helped Tabitha down from the wagon. "What's this?" he demanded. "We asked for a doctor, not a woman." "I am a doctor," Tabitha said, medical bag in hand. "And unless you have another physician hidden in that mine, I suggest you take me to your injured man immediately." Donovan looked to Finn, who stared back impassively. "Your choice," Finn said. "Let her help, or explain to Tommy why his pa bled out waiting for a doctor with the right plumbing." The mine foreman's face darkened, but he grudgingly led them into the tunnel. The air grew thick with dust and the smell of earth as they progressed deeper. Finally, they reached a section where several men were working to clear fallen rock. On the ground, illuminated by the weak glow of lanterns, lay a man whose lower body was partially trapped beneath timber and stone. His face was gray with pain and shock. "Everyone back," Tabitha ordered, kneeling beside the injured man. "I need space and light." To her surprise, the miners obeyed, perhaps too desperate to question her authority. She worked quickly, assessing the man's condition while instructing the miners on how to safely free his leg. "What's your name?" she asked the injured miner. "James Sullivan," he gasped. My boy! Tommy is safe. He's the one who brought us here, Tabitha assured him as she prepared a solution of laudanum. This will help with the pain while we work to free you. For the next hour, Tabitha directed the rescue operation with calm efficiency. When Sullivan's leg was finally freed, the damage was severe, the bone shattered, the flesh mangled. Can you save it? Donovan asked, his earlier hostility replaced by grudging respect. Tabitha examined the wound carefully. I believe so, but it will require surgery and careful tending afterward. We need to transport him back to town immediately. With Finn's help, they rigged a stretcher and loaded Sullivan into the wagon. Tabitha rode in the back with him, monitoring his condition during the jolting journey back to town. We can use my office, she told Finn. It's not ideal, but it's cleaner than most alternatives right now. Word had spread through town by the time they returned. A crowd had gathered outside the former dry goods store, watching as Finn and two miners carried Sullivan inside. Tabitha followed, already issuing instructions. I need boiling water, clean linens, and strong men to hold him still. This won't be pleasant. To her amazement, several women stepped forward with offers of help, including Mrs. Wilson and the schoolteacher, Miss Hayes. Men volunteered to assist with holding Sullivan during the operation. Even Mayor Jenkins appeared, though he remained awkwardly on the periphery of the activity. For 3 hours, Tabitha worked to save James Sullivan's leg, setting the broken bones, removing fragments, cleaning and suturing the wound. Throughout the procedure, she maintained a steady stream of calm instructions to her impromptu assistants, explaining what she was doing and why. When it was finally over, Sullivan was unconscious but stable. Tabitha had successfully saved the leg, though full recovery would take months. He'll need to stay here where I can monitor him, she said, washing blood from her hands in a basin. And someone should fetch his boy. I'll bring Tommy, Finn offered, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and admiration. And I'll stay with him tonight so you can rest. Tabitha shook her head. I'll stay. He may develop fever or bleeding that requires immediate attention. Then I'll bring you something to eat and fresh coffee, Finn insisted. Doctor needs to keep up her strength too. As word of Sullivan's surgery spread, the atmosphere in Copper Creek began to shift. The next day, several miners appeared at Tabitha's makeshift clinic with injuries they had been neglecting, cuts that needed stitching, a broken finger that had never set properly, a persistent cough that suggested lung problems common to miners. Tabitha treated each one methodically, her manner professional but kind. By the end of the week, James Sullivan was showing signs of improvement, and Tabitha had treated over a dozen patients. Finn had become a constant presence, appearing with meals, helping to move furniture into the clinic, and spreading the word about Doc Lockhart's skill. When he wasn't at the livery, he was often at the clinic, seemingly finding endless repairs that needed his attention. You don't have to keep bringing me meals, Tabitha told him one evening as he arrived with a covered plate from the hotel restaurant. Mrs. Wilson feeds me quite well. You missed dinner again, he pointed out, too busy splinting Hank Miller's arm. It was a clean break, thankfully. She accepted the plate gratefully. Thank you, Mr. Calloway. You've been extraordinarily kind. Finn, he corrected her. If we're going to be neighbors, might as well use my given name. Finn, she repeated, smiling. And you should call me Tabitha, or Tabby as my family does. Tabby suits you, he said, then looked embarrassed. I mean, you're determined, like a cat that won't be shooed away. She laughed. I've been called worse. As autumn deepened toward winter, Tabitha's practice steadily grew. The clinic was now properly furnished with examination tables, cabinets for her instruments and medicines, and a proper surgery room in the back. She had moved into the rooms above the clinic, finding it more convenient than the boarding house, especially for night emergencies. Mayor Jenkins had officially recognized her position as town physician, though his endorsement came with a grudging quality that suggested he was simply bowing to public opinion rather than admitting his earlier error. The first major snowfall came in early December, transforming Copper Creek into a postcard vision of winter beauty. Tabitha woke to find the world outside her window blanketed in white, the morning sunlight creating a dazzling display. She dressed warmly and descended to the clinic, where she found Finn already stoking the stove to a roaring blaze. "Morning," he greeted her. "Figured you'd need extra heat today. It's 15 below. "You're an angel," she said, warming her hands by the stove. "I was dreading coming down to a cold clinic." Finn's ears reddened at the compliment. Over the past months, Tabitha had noticed this happening more frequently. Their friendship had deepened into something comfortable yet charged with unspoken possibilities. She found herself looking forward to his daily visits, missing him when livery business took him out of town. "Got something for you," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. He withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Early Christmas gift, I suppose." Tabitha unwrapped it carefully to find a beautifully crafted wooden sign. "Dr. Tabitha Lockhart, physician and surgeon," carved in elegant lettering. "Finn, it's beautiful," she breathed, tracing the letters with her fingertip. "Figured it was time you had a proper sign, not that faded old dry goods one," he said, looking pleased by her reaction. "Old man Weber helped with the carving. He used to be a cabinet maker back east." "I love it. Thank you." On impulse, she stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek. Finn froze, his eyes widening slightly before a slow smile spread across his face. Their moment was interrupted by the clinic door flying open, admitting a blast of cold air and a frantic young woman. "Dr. Lockhart," she gasped. "It's Mrs. Peterson. The baby's coming, but something's wrong." Tabitha immediately switched to professional mode. "How far apart are her pains? Has her water broken?" "Every few minutes now. Water broke an hour ago. But there's blood. More than there should be." "I'll get my bag." Tabitha turned to Finn. "Could you hitch up your sleigh?" "The Peterson farm is too far to go on foot in this snow." "Already hitched," he said. "I'll take you." The journey to the Peterson farm was treacherous, the sleigh struggling through deep drifts while Tabitha mentally prepared for what might await her. Mrs. Peterson was a young bride of 19, expecting her first child. Complications could prove fatal for mother and baby without proper intervention. The small farmhouse was warm but tense with worry when they arrived. Mr. Peterson paced the front room while his mother attended his wife in the bedroom. The older woman looked relieved when Tabitha entered. "Thank the Lord," Mrs. Peterson Sr. said. "She's having a hard time of it." Anna Peterson lay pale and sweating in the bed, her nightgown soaked with blood. Tabitha examined her quickly, heart sinking at what she found. "The baby is turned wrong," she explained gently to Anna. "That's why it's taking so long and why you're bleeding. I'm going to have to turn it." The procedure was difficult and dangerous. For nearly an hour, Tabitha worked to manipulate the baby into the correct position, all while monitoring Anna's bleeding and strength. Outside the bedroom, Finn and Mr. Peterson waited in tense silence, occasionally hearing Anna's cries through the closed door. Finally, the cry they had been waiting for, a baby's first outraged protest at entering the world. Tabitha emerged from the bedroom some time later, tired but smiling. "A healthy baby girl," she announced, "and Mrs. Peterson will recover with proper rest. She lost a good deal of blood, but the worst is behind her." Mr. Peterson's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Can I see them?" "Of course. Your mother is cleaning up the baby now." As the new father rushed past her, Tabitha sagged against the wall, the adrenaline of the emergency fading to leave exhaustion in its wake. Finn was at her side immediately, supporting her elbow. "You need rest," he said quietly. "I'll rest when we're back in town," she assured him. "I want to monitor Anna for another hour to be certain the bleeding has truly stopped." That hour stretched to 3 as Tabitha taught Mrs. Peterson Sr. how to check for excessive bleeding and care for her daughter-in-law. By the time they left, the winter day was fading toward evening, the temperature dropping further. Halfway back to town, the sleigh hit a hidden obstacle beneath the snow, cracking one of the runners. The damage wasn't fatal, but it slowed their progress considerably. "We won't make it back before dark at this rate," Finn said, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "There's a line shack about a half-mile ahead. We can shelter there until morning." "A line shack?" Tabitha asked through chattering teeth. The temperature had plummeted with the setting sun, and her coat, while adequate for town, wasn't designed for prolonged exposure. "Used by cowboys working the range. Basic, but it'll have a stove and firewood." Finn glanced at her with concern. "You're freezing." "I'm fine," she insisted, though in truth her fingers and toes had gone numb. The line shack was little more than a one-room cabin with a stove, rough bunk, small table, and chairs. Finn quickly built a fire while Tabitha huddled near the stove, slowly regaining feeling in her extremities. "Not exactly the Plaza Hotel," Finn apologized, looking around the sparse accommodation. "It's warm and dry," Tabitha replied. "That's all that matters right now." As the cabin heated up, Tabitha removed her coat and gloves. Finn busied himself preparing a simple meal from supplies stored in the cabin: beans, coffee, and hardtack. "Better than nothing," he said as they ate. "Though I reckon you're used to finer dining." Tabitha smiled. "You'd be surprised what medical students eat when they're studying. This is practically a feast compared to some of my dinners at school." "Why medicine?" Finn asked suddenly. "You mentioned your sister, but there must have been easier paths for a Boston lady." Tabitha considered the question. "It wasn't just my sister's death, though that was the catalyst. I've always been fascinated by how the human body works, how it can heal itself with proper care. And I saw how women suffered because they couldn't speak openly about their ailments to male doctors. Some died of diseases that might have been treated if discovered earlier." She sipped her coffee. "What about you? Have you always worked with horses? More or less?" "My father was a rancher before he lost everything in the Panic of '73. After he died, I drifted for a while, worked cattle drives, broke horses for different outfits. Saved enough to buy the livery 3 years ago." His eyes took on a distant look. "Always figured I'd have my own ranch someday, but land prices keep climbing." "You'd make a good rancher," Tabitha said. "You have a way with animals. And people," he added with a small smile. "Most of the time, anyway." As the night deepened, the wind rose, howling around the cabin's eaves. Tabitha shivered despite the fire's warmth. "You take the bunk," Finn said, arranging his coat on the floor near the stove. "I'll be fine down here." "Don't be ridiculous," Tabitha protested. "You're too tall to sleep comfortably on the floor. We can share the bunk. We're both adults." Finn's expression was unreadable in the firelight. "It wouldn't be proper." "Propriety seems less important than frostbite," she countered. "Besides, I trust you." They arranged themselves awkwardly on the narrow bunk, back to back, a blanket between them. Despite the innocence of the arrangement, Tabitha found herself acutely aware of Finn's presence, the rhythm of his breathing, the warmth radiating from his body, the faint scent of leather and pine that she had come to associate with him. "Tabby," he said softly into the darkness after several silent minutes. "Are you planning to stay in Copper Creek? Permanently? I mean," the question caught her by surprise. I haven't thought that far ahead. But yes, I think so. I've built something here. The people need me. She hesitated. Why do you ask? Finn was quiet for so long she thought he might have fallen asleep. Just wondering if you missed Boston. The theaters and fancy restaurants. Proper society. I don't miss proper society in the slightest, she said with feeling. Do you know why I came west in the first place? My father had arranged a marriage for me to a man twice my age with political ambitions who saw a doctor wife as an embarrassing liability. He wanted me to give up medicine entirely. She sighed. When my brother wrote about Copper Creek needing a doctor, it seemed like Providence offering an escape. Finn shifted slightly. So you were running away? I prefer to think of it as running towards something better, Tabitha corrected. A place where I could practice medicine freely, build a life of my own choosing. And have you found what you were looking for? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. Tabitha found herself holding her breath, sensing they had reached some pivotal moment. I believe I have, she said finally, though perhaps not exactly in the way I expected. Finn rolled over to face her back. She could feel his gaze even though she couldn't see it. Tabby, I'm not an educated man. I don't have fancy words or wealth to offer. But these past months, watching you build your practice, seeing how you care for people. He trailed off. I've never met anyone like you. Slowly, Tabitha turned to face him in the narrow bunk. In the dim light from the banked fire, his features were cast in shadow, but she could see the intensity in his eyes. You don't need fancy words, she whispered. You've shown me who you are through your actions every day since I arrived. Finn reached out hesitantly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. When you first came to town, I admired your courage. Now I admire everything about you. Everything? She asked, her voice barely audible over the wind outside. Your determination, your compassion, the way you furrow your brow when you're concentrating on a difficult case. The way you never gave up even when the whole town turned their backs on you. His hand rested lightly against her cheek. I think I've been falling in love with you since that first day. Tabitha's heart thundered in her chest. I've never felt this way about anyone before, she admitted. It terrifies me sometimes, how important you've become to me. The kiss that followed was gentle at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. I should. Finn began, moving to return to his side of the bunk. Tabitha caught his hand. Stay. Just hold me tonight. They fell asleep with Finn's arm around her waist, her head tucked beneath his chin, the howling storm outside contrasting with the peaceful warmth they had created within. Morning brought clear skies and a transformed landscape. The snow had drifted high against the cabin, but the sun shone brilliantly, beginning the slow process of melting. They ate a quick breakfast, neither mentioning the intimacy of the night before, though something had fundamentally shifted between them. Finn repaired the sleigh runner as best he could, and they set out for Copper Creek. The return journey was slower but uneventful, and by mid-morning, they reached the outskirts of town. People will talk, Tabitha said, suddenly concerned about appearances. When they realize we spent the night away from town. Let them talk, Finn replied. Anyone who knows either of us knows there was nothing improper. Despite his reassurance, Tabitha was aware of curious glances as Finn drove the sleigh down Main Street. Mrs. Wilson was sweeping the boardwalk in front of her boarding house and paused, broom in hand, to watch them pass. I'll come by the clinic later, Finn said as he helped her down in front of her building. Need to check on the horses and repair that runner properly. Thank you, Finn, for everything. She squeezed his hand quickly before turning to enter the clinic, where patients were already waiting. The day passed in a blur of consultations, winter ailments mostly, coughs and chills, and one broken arm from a fall on ice. Tabitha worked steadily, but her mind frequently drifted to Finn and the previous night. What did it mean for their future? Had his declaration been genuine, or influenced by the intimacy of their situation? By evening, she was exhausted but anxious, watching the door for Finn's arrival. When he finally appeared, it was with an unusually serious expression. "Everything all right at the livery?" she asked, suddenly worried. "Livery's fine, but there's something I need to discuss with you." He glanced around the clinic waiting room, which still held 2 patients. "In private, when you're finished." Anxiety knotted in Tabitha's stomach as she completed her final consultations. Had Finn reconsidered? Was he regretting his words from the night before? When the last patient had gone, Finn closed the clinic door and turned the sign to closed. He remained by the door, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Finn, what is it?" Tabitha asked, unable to bear the suspense any longer. "I spoke with Reverend Thomas today," he said. Tabitha's heart sank. The Reverend was known for his traditional views on women's roles. "Is he upset about our staying in the line shack?" "Because nothing happened." "It's not about that," Finn interrupted. He crossed the room to stand before her, taking both her hands in his. "Tabby, I meant what I said last night. Every word. I love you. I think I have since that first day when you stood up to the whole town." Relief flooded through her. "I love you too, Finn." "Then marry me," he said simply. "I spoke to Reverend Thomas about performing the ceremony, if you'll have me." Tabitha stared at him, momentarily speechless. "But what about my practice? Would you expect me to give it up?" Finn looked genuinely confused. "Why would I ask that? You're a doctor. That's who you are. That's part of why I love you. Many men would consider a wife with a career unconventional at best. I'm not many men," Finn pointed out. "And you're not a conventional woman. That's our good fortune, I reckon." Tabitha's eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you, Finn Calloway." News of their engagement spread through Copper Creek like wildfire. Most reactions were positive. Finn was well respected in town, and Tabitha had won over many of the initial skeptics through her medical skill. A few traditionalists muttered about the impropriety of a married woman continuing her profession, but such voices were increasingly in the minority. They married in April, when the worst of winter had passed and the first wildflowers dotted the hills around Copper Creek. The ceremony was held in the small church, filled to capacity with townsfolk who had come to respect the unconventional couple. Even Mayor Jenkins attended, presenting them with a silver tea service as a wedding gift, perhaps his way of apologizing for his earlier dismissal of Tabitha's capabilities. Mrs. Sullivan, whose husband's leg had healed remarkably well under Tabitha's care, organized a reception in the town hall. The mining company donated a barrel of whiskey, and the celebrations continued well into the night. Their new home was a modest but comfortable house on the edge of town, within walking distance of both the clinic and the livery. Finn had purchased the property months earlier, he admitted, hoping one day Tabitha might share it with him. "It needs work," he said as he carried her over the threshold that night. "But I thought we could make it our own together." "It's perfect," Tabitha assured him, taking in the simple furnishings and the large windows that would fill the rooms with light. "Our own place, where neither of us has to be anything but ourselves." Life as a married doctor presented challenges Tabitha hadn't anticipated. Some male patients still hesitated to consult her about certain ailments, though most had overcome their initial reluctance. More surprising was the increase in female patients, women who had previously suffered in silence rather than discuss intimate health concerns with the male physicians in neighboring towns. Finn supported her practice unreservedly, often stepping in to manage the clinic's accounts or deliver medicines to outlying farms when Tabitha was busy with patients. He expanded the livery to include a carriage service, which prospered as Copper Creek grew with the arrival of the railroad the following year. Their partnership, both personal and professional, became a source of quiet pride for many in town. Young girls, including Tommy Sullivan's younger sister, began to declare their intentions to become doctors just like Dr. Lockhart, much to the consternation of more traditional parents. In the spring of 1878, nearly 2 years after Tabitha's arrival in Copper Creek, she made a discovery that both thrilled and terrified her. The symptoms were unmistakable to a physician, but she confirmed her suspicions with a careful self-examination before sharing the news with Finn. He found her that evening sitting in their small garden, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. "You're home early," she observed as he settled beside her on the bench. "Wanted to spend time with my wife," Finn replied, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "You've been quiet the past few days. Everything all right at the clinic?" "The clinic is fine," Tabitha assured him. She took a deep breath. "Finn, I have something to tell you." His expression grew concerned. "What is it?" "I'm going to have a baby. In about 7 months, I'd estimate." Finn stared at her, his expression cycling rapidly through shock, joy, and wonder before settling on pure happiness. "A baby," he repeated as though testing the word. "We're going to have a baby. Are you pleased?" Tabitha asked, suddenly uncertain. They had discussed children in abstract terms, but never with any concrete plans. In answer, Finn gathered her into his arms, kissing her with such tender passion that no words were necessary. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've never been happier," he whispered. "A child with your intelligence and compassion, what greater blessing could we ask for? And your courage and integrity," Tabitha added, "though I hope they inherit your patience rather than my stubbornness." Finn laughed. "That stubbornness has saved lives, including mine when I took that fall from the new stallion last winter." His expression grew more serious. "What about your practice? Will you continue?" "As long as I'm able," Tabitha said firmly. "Many women work right up until their confinement, especially out here where every pair of hands is needed. The town still needs a doctor. And afterward, I could help more with the clinic while you recover." Tabitha was touched by his automatic assumption that she would continue her profession after the baby's arrival. "We'll manage together as we always have." As her pregnancy progressed, Tabitha found herself the object of well-meaning but sometimes intrusive concern from the women of Copper Creek. Everyone had advice on what she should eat, how much rest she needed, which folk remedies would ensure an easy delivery or a healthy child. She accepted their interest graciously, recognizing it as the community's way of embracing her fully at last. The baby arrived in late November, during the first significant snowfall of the season. The labor was long but uncomplicated, with Mrs. Wilson and the midwife from the next town attending while Finn paced anxiously outside the bedroom door. "You can come in now," Mrs. Wilson called eventually. "There's someone who wants to meet you." Finn entered the bedroom with uncharacteristic timidity to find Tabitha propped up against pillows, a small bundle cradled in her arms. Her face, though tired, glowed with joy. "Come meet your daughter," she invited. Finn approached the bed as though in a dream, gazing down at the tiny face nestled in blankets. The baby had a dusting of dark hair and, when she briefly opened her eyes, revealed a hint of her father's striking blue. "She's perfect," he whispered, carefully sitting on the edge of the bed. "Just like her mother." "Would you like to hold her?" Tabitha asked. With infinite care, Finn took his daughter in his arms, his large hands making the newborn seem even smaller. "Hello, little one," he said softly. I'm your pa. What shall we call her? Tabitha asked, watching the tender scene with heart-swelling love. Finn considered the question seriously. What about Hope? Because that's what she represents, our hope for the future, and everything good that can come from people listening to each other, even when it's difficult. Hope Calloway. Tabitha tested the name. It's beautiful. As Copper Creek grew from a mining settlement to a proper town, the Calloways grew with it. Finn expanded his business to include a freight company that serviced the railroad, while Tabitha's medical practice flourished. She eventually took on an apprentice, a young woman from Denver who had read about the female doctor in Montana and traveled all the way to Copper Creek to learn from her. Hope grew into a spirited child with her mother's intelligence and her father's affinity for animals. A brother joined the family 2 years later, followed by another sister the year after that. The Calloway home, expanded to accommodate their growing family, became known as a place of warmth and welcome for anyone in need. On the 10th anniversary of Tabitha's arrival in Copper Creek, the town held a celebration in her honor. Mayor Jenkins, now in his third term, presented her with a plaque commemorating her service to the community. The inscription read, "To Dr. Tabitha Lockhart Calloway, who taught us that wisdom comes in many forms, and true healing begins with listening." After the ceremony, Tabitha and Finn walked home together, their children running ahead on the moonlit path. "Did you ever imagine this is where life would lead you?" Finn asked, squeezing her hand. "That day you stepped off the stagecoach?" Tabitha shook her head. "Never. I was just hoping to escape a life that felt like a cage. Instead, I found a home and a purpose larger than myself." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "And I found you, the man who listened when everyone else turned away." "Best decision I ever made," Finn said, pulling her close. "Listening to you. Twice as hard," Tabitha reminded him with a smile. "At least," he agreed, bending to kiss her beneath the vast Montana sky, where they had built their unexpected, extraordinary life together.